EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania. This is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning to another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, December 22nd. A little transparency here for you. I'm actually recording this on Saturday night, and the reason I'm doing that is I'll be in person in Washington, D.C. to see the Eagles take on the the Commanders. Used to be the Redskins. Watching them that game in D.C. tomorrow, and I will not be around in the morning because we have to leave very early in the morning. So I'm doing this on Saturday night. So some of you will be watching this on Sunday at normal time because that's when it's going to be posted on social media. Others will see it already on YouTube or our website in advance. But the information is exactly the same, so we're not really dealing with anything different. We're going to go through, like we normally do, go through everything that we're looking for, both near and long term. We'll start off with the year-to-date snowfall. And for the first time this year, we have two that are colored blue. Allentown, actually the Lehigh Valley, is now technically year-to-date slightly above average snowfall. And that's after this last system that just came in on Friday night into, I guess, early Saturday, right? Because it came in the overnight. But some areas that are on the board now that weren't on the board before. So Newark had nothing until this week, and there was two different systems that gave combined 2.5 inches there. Still below average year to date, but you're getting something now. Atlantic City even has a trace. They had nothing last week. Philadelphia did not get that much. Only now they got to remember Philadelphia's at the Philadelphia airport is an extreme southern part of Philadelphia in Philadelphia County, and they only had 0.1 officially measured there. But two different events this week in the Lehigh Valley gets that up to 4.1, which is 0.3, I think, almost a week ago, or I think it was Sunday night, somewhere around there. And then there was another 4.1 yesterday. Overperformer there. Square at Wilkes-Barre 18.3, but there's only 5.8 of that this month, so they are actually, for the month of December, still behind average, but a lot of this came here from that one big storm here in late November. So we're getting on the board here, but we're still below average in most locations, except the ones that are colored in blue that are year-to-date above. And if you look at the region as a whole, the interior is doing actually quite well. All these areas are higher elevations, and then the interior part of New England up here, it got hit pretty good so far. Further southeast, not as much yet, but again, you got into something here, and this is with that last storm that got all the way into central New Jersey. Still behind here, and not very much once you get to south central Pennsylvania from like the Harrisburg area. Harrisburg's about 1.8 right now. Lancaster's about an inch so far, or thereabout, at least Lancaster Airport. And then when you get into Philadelphia, South Jersey, and Delaware, trace amounts up to less than an inch. Okay, so we're not quite there yet, but this is going to turn around, and I think we're going to have a better shot at snow in January. I think the probability is going to not only go up because the climatology tells us so, but because the pattern, I think, is going to be very good. So we're going to get into that here today, too. Here's what average snowfall is for the month of December, and I don't think any of these locations are going to reach these numbers in December. We're slightly below average is our projection for the region as a whole as far as snowfall is concerned. Allentown's going to come close. It's going to depend on that system. There's a little weak clipper system coming in Monday night, late Monday night, early Tuesday morning, which would be Christmas Eve morning, not night, but morning. Might get somebody a quick coating to a half inch or maybe an inch up by the northern part of Pennsylvania, but I mean, it doesn't look like much there. So 4.1, probably going to be very slightly below there, but I mean, everywhere else is going to be slightly below as well. And our projections for this is from the long range table that we do every Friday. Okay, this is what we have. We have near to slightly below average temperatures for the month as a whole. We are going to turn mild here at the end of the month, but it's not going to be able to offset what we've had thus far. And also these cold temperatures we're having straight through Sunday. Most of you are going to be watching this on Sunday, and it's brutal outside as far as the temperatures are concerned. We're looking at highs, some areas not getting out of teens in the northern areas and lower 20s elsewhere. And then it looks like overnight lows are going to be in the single digits just about everywhere across the region. So it's going to be pretty cold, and this is going to skew things a little bit, even though we have a milder turn, but not until we get to about the 29th or so. I think the 29th, 30th, 31st, 1st, 2nd, maybe even the 3rd are above average in that period. Then we go back to below average after that point in January, we think. So January as a whole, slightly below average temperatures, and you're already talking about slightly below at the coldest climatological point of the year. So you don't need below average temperatures to get it snow in January. It's already the coldest it's going to be at any point in the year in terms of averages. So slightly below isn't really necessary, but it helps. And then slightly above average precipitation or snowfall we're expecting here in the month of January. So you see what averages are in January. It almost doubles from December to January, and we're expecting slightly above that for the month. Okay, so it might be a lot more. It could be there's a potential in there. You could have a big storm in there, but if that happens, it's probably going to be a little bit later in the month, but we'll see. Here is the latest update on the La Nina situation, and although it has not been officially declared by the Climate Prediction Center yet, it is. All these numbers here are generally in, except for Nino 1 and 2, which is still not quite there yet. The rest of the Atlantic Basin, or excuse me, the Pacific Basin, the Pacific Basin out here, and the other ENSO regions are in La Nina territory. So this might change. They might declare it as early as next week. This is pretty amazing because La Nina, we were sitting here back here at the end of last winter, and people were saying, "Well, we're gonna have a La Nina summer." Well, that never happened. And then we got to May or something like that, and they were like, "Okay, well maybe not the whole summer, maybe like August." No, never happened. Then we got into the fall, and they're like, "Oh, somewhere between September and November." Yeah, that didn't happen either. So now here we are finally, and we said if it was going to happen, we said, not whoever else you're talking to, that if it's going to happen, it's going to be toward the end of December or early January. Well, here we are. We're finally getting to a weak La Nina background state. It's still a negative ENSO, just like it was before, but I think we have enough there for the CPC to declare this officially with their next update when we get to Monday morning. And the La Nina areas are right in here. These are all your La Nina areas that are below average and more than the threshold for La Nina, which is negative 0.5 Celsius or lower. It's still a little bit out here in Nino 1 and 2. It is still a little bit anomalously warmer. So we're still in ENSO neutral territory there, but everywhere else is not. So we're awfully close for them to declare that. Now, the driving pattern, the background of our pattern here is, of course, La Nina and what that does, right? But then we have intraseasonal variability with the best convection and the best tropical forcing in this area here between the east coast of Africa all the way through the Indo-Pacific region, maritime continent, Indo-Pacific region, and then all the way across the Pacific to here. So that we're looking at that entire area for the Madden-Julian Oscillation. And where the best convection is along that area, along that line that I just drew, is going to be where what dictates the Madden-Julian Oscillation phases that we're in. Okay, so best convection right now is in phase 6. And phase 6, no matter what, is going to be a milder phase. Well, I don't care if we're in ENSO neutral or a La Nina, it's mild. Okay, so we are going to have that milder period. It's a couple days lag time response to that, what's happening with that. And that's why we're going to have a positive EPO, which I'll talk about in a minute, in between Christmas and New Year's, and actually a couple days after Christmas through a couple days after New Year's is when we'll have that milder period in response to this little brief stint in phase 6. Now, once we get past that, get to Christmas Day and beyond into early January, we're going to be in phase 7, and it's taking its time going through here, and it's slowing up. And then the same thing here in the European. It's very slowing up going to the early January in phase 7, and the reason it's doing that is attributed to the Indo-Pacific warm pole that I talked about last week. This is the updated map here for today. And again, the warmest sea surface temperatures, these are actual temperatures of water, are right here in the entire globe. That's where you're going to find the warmest waters. So convection is going to like to stick where the best ocean heat content available is, and that's going to be in that area right there. Typically in a La Nina, your best is out here in phases 4 and 5 in the maritime continent. So this is notably east of that, and you're getting a lot of convection in a very, even though it's in a La Nina, or what we think is a weak La Nina now, it's not behaving in the same manner that it normally would, because this warm pole is a lot further east, and that's going to favor, instead of phases 4 and 5 which is a typical La Nina phases, 4 and 5 is dominant in the maritime continent typically. They're not going to be dominant out here in 6, 7, maybe getting to the western parts of 8, but it's kind of running a roadblock here. It doesn't really keep going into 8, and it just kind of stops and meanders around phase 7 in both cases, both the GFS the GEFS ensembles and the European model, they're both doing the same thing. So it's kind of running into a block where it can't go any further because it's getting outside it. As this moves east, this wave, the Kelvin wave that drives the MJO is moving east, is going into a certain point. It's like, oh, that water's too cold, and it stops. Okay, it's not as simple as that, but I mean, I'm trying to generalize it for you so you can kind of visualize this. And wherever this convection is, controls the jet stream troughs and all the ridges in the troughs and the jet stream and latent heat release processes. There's a lot goes into it, but we are going to be, with time, as a result of this, we are going to have a return of a negative EPO. We're going to be a positive EPO this week coming up. We'll get to that in a second here. But what that does here is get warmth that's ridging here and a cross-polar flow and colder air coming back into the United States. This is suggesting there might be some blocking. I really don't think you're going to have any blocking coming up here. We're going to have more of a negative EPO and positive TNH combo, which positive TNH is just a low pressure over the Hudson Bay, right? Or, excuse me, high pressure. Yeah, low pressure. I was right. It's already late at night. I can't have coffee this late, so I'll have to bear with me. And then you have ridging into the Gulf of Alaska. That's your negative EPO, and you get a cross-polar flow going in here too. So that's a typical January pattern with this combination, and we're going to be heading back to that. We had hints of that already in the first week of December when it was so cold. We started off like 8 to 10 degrees below average, starting off the month of December, and then we went away from that, right? Well, I told you that was going to be a common theme going forward, and we're going to see this again. And guess what? We're going to see it again. Here is the EPO now, okay? And that ridging, this is a positive EPO, which is a trough in the Gulf of Alaska and Aleutians. And this period right in here is going to coincide with our milder period that we expected for a long time. Probably not getting in here until, you see, it just gradually increases and barely goes positive for a couple days. It's not until you get in here where it just really spikes. And when you're in this spike period here, that's when the EPO is at its most positive point, and that means we're going to have milder temperatures from about the 29th through the 2nd or 3rd of January, okay? But you see what it's doing after that. It's going down, and it's going to stay down. So it's going to drop, and this time when this drops here is right around to negative, because is right around the 30th or 31st, somewhere right in there is when it goes negative. There's a lag time with the EPO to change the our sensible weather patterns here locally from about 4 days or so, 4 or 5 days. So that's why we're expecting right around January 3rd or 4th for this change to take place in response to this. But this is all in response to this and the Manitoulin oscillation cycle. Okay, so one is kind of setting with the railroad, or laying down the railroad tracks, I guess, for the next thing to follow. And that's what's just these pieces all just kind of line up. We're going to phase 7 in January. Boom, we get this. Okay, so everything's lining up. This isn't a guessing game anymore. We can see everything that is driving this, and everything that we are forecasting has a little bit higher than usual confidence for January. And you're hearing that across the board from a lot of different people because it's pretty cut and dry at this point. I know everybody always looks for when's the ball going to drop, or I'm waiting for the the punchline. When is this going to be something? Hey, the pattern change is coming and it lasts a week or two and then it's gone. I don't think so. Don't think so. So here's the positive EPO that sets up next week. Here's the positive EPO because you have this big area of trough here, a large area, broad area of trough in the Aleutians and Gulf of Alaska. So you get some ridging here, and we get some milder temperatures here. But this is not going to come in until after Christmas, it looks like. We're going to progressively get warmer next week, but it's still going to be slightly below average on Christmas Day and the day after. It's not until you get to, when you get to the 27th, 28th, it's near to maybe very slightly above average, and then we get into the above average stuff when we get to the 29th and going forward, all right? So when you have this kind of configuration, this presents a mild Pacific pattern coming across. This is the Pacific jet just running rampant across the country, and the cold's bottled up here, and it can't really come down to the United States, and that's what we're going to have, okay? That's what we're going to have, and it's because of this big trough that's sitting out here, exactly where this graphic shows where it should be. That's exactly where it is. Look at that, right there. There it is. Okay. Now, once we get to New Year's Eve, the EPO is going to start kicking in, right? and the negative EPO. This is going to bring the ridging back in here, and then you're going to eventually get a cross-polar flow going. This isn't yet. This is too early. This is the 31st of December. This is when the changes are starting. So the EPO turning negative will have a downstream lag time effect of about maybe 3 to 5 days, somewhere in there. Okay, so that's why we're targeting the January 3rd, 4th period for this to flip here and our sensible weather to be affected by it. And once that happens, you get a cross-polar flow instead with this big ridging in the Gulf of Alaska and the Aleutians, which is shown right here. Okay, and it kicks this trough out and makes it retrograde to the west. Now, you see this in motion. This is what it looks like. Okay, and you can watch this as this is going forward. Whoops. Oh, what, man, apparently I had to use the drawing tool until it's done. All right, there we go. We stopped this right here, and we got a cross-polar flow going here, folks. Okay, and now people are starting to say this is a storm signal. It's just cold air. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be a big storm there. Could there be a storm right around January 4th, like people are speculating about? And I think the GFS showed on one of the runs. It's not impossible. Not impossible. I really think that it's going to be a tight window here, though, and our best chance for anything bigger is probably going to be January 10th and beyond, and going all the way through probably the end of the month, at least the 25th. So that week there, those 2 weeks there are probably going to be pretty wild, I think, as the way it's looking. I wouldn't really put all my eggs in my basket for the first week of January for anything big. It's probably beyond the 10th and beyond is what we're looking at, but we'll see. Not enough there to put a big signal on there yet, but you can see what this is doing, where it's just bringing all this colder into the country with this cross-polar flow and the negative EPO. And here's another. This is how the temperatures respond to that. So you have the warmer temperatures. They're going to be there for the first couple days of January, but then you get into the slightly below average stuff here. This is January 2nd, January 3rd. Here's January 4th. It starts getting colder here at that point, and that's when the change is going to be, we think. We can see that here on the European ensemble. This is for Allentown Lehigh Valley International Airport. It's the centermost point of our coverage area. That's why I use this as an example. Average high there. Well, it was actually yesterday because I'm recording this on Saturday evening instead of Sunday. So I have 42 degrees was the average high yesterday on Saturday. On Sunday, January 5th, it goes down to 39 at this particular location. But you can see, obviously, very cold Sunday, Monday, right? And then we recover, but you're still slightly below average, right? Until you get to 28th, you're near average, and then you go above average here for all this time here. And that goes all the way to about January 2nd. January 3rd, kind of one model saying it's going to be kind of near average, the other one slightly below. We'll say right around the January 3rd or 4th period, you'll see that change, but see where it's going after that. Back to cold temperatures again, and that should be sustainable cold that is going to last for much of this entire month. And we can see that here on the January extended ensemble pattern, where this just continues and continues and continues. As we get toward the end of the month, it's kind of near to slightly below instead of just solidly slightly below. Right here's a slightly below. And then it goes near to slightly below, that goes into early February. It's still cooler than average, and that should be able to continue and sustain itself for a while. So that's why I'm saying up until the 25th, it's pretty solid. Once you get past that, you're getting into weeks 5 and 6 in our long range lead time. So things can change a little bit with that. I don't want to go all my eggs in one basket on that period just yet. But I mean, Euro Weeklies at least are suggesting that's going to be still leaning slightly below average at that point. And if you take the entire period from when that pattern flips from January 4th all the way up through February 4th, that entire period of that is looking at about 3 to 4 degrees below average for that entire period. And that's coming at the coldest period of the entire year from a climatological standpoint. So you see where we're getting here. You don't have to be below average to get snow, and yet we're going to be below average. Now, does the precipitation cooperate? I don't think we're going to have a boatload of precipitation, but enough that the vast majority of these events you're going to have in January, once you get past the 3rd, are going to be in the form of snow for most areas and even further south. So the European ensemble, the weeklies are showing for that same period a 32-day snowfall total getting, look how far south the snow's getting. I mean, it's getting everybody involved in this. That's not the issue. And this is an average of 50 different models showing this. So this is all, if this was correct, as this mean shows for that entire period, that's slightly above average snowfall in January. So I really think that is going to be something that happens in January. I'm not really looking at this like, I always try to look at things of what can go wrong, right? And what can screw this up, especially when we're dealing with severe weather. Everybody's like, oh, we're going to have a big severe weather day. And I'm looking on the soundings saying, okay, what can screw this up? Okay, I'm doing the same thing with this, and I'm meeting this with skepticism because I don't want to be one of those people that say, "Oh, look out, we're going to be snowy and cold, and we're going to have blizzards in January and all that stuff." Could you have one? Sure, I guess, but I'm not going to sit here and say that. So I look for things that can go wrong. I'm not finding many things to go wrong with January right now. It doesn't mean it can, that it can't go wrong. Okay, so just keep it. Understand this is all probability based, and even though the setup looks great, you have the temperatures cooperating, you have the negative EPO coming in here with this cross-polar flow stuff coming. It's going to dominate for at least several weeks. Something can always happen. That's why I don't project beyond 5 to 6 weeks either, because then it gets even crazier after that. I mean, I've seen the Weather Channel has their February outlook having an absolute torch in February. Could that happen? Sure. But am I confident to put something like that out yet? No. And I don't do seasonal forecasting for that reason. Personally, I feel it's a joke. More power to anybody who wants to try to do it. And if they get it right more times than not, good for you. But, I mean, I just know that the probability of me sitting here today on December, well, it's the 21st when we're recording this. So December 21st, and I'm projecting ahead to, like, March, and you're trying to tell me what it's going to do in March. I mean, I could try, but is it going to be accurate? I mean, I can flip a coin too. What's the difference? So I just don't get into that. I think February is still kind of a wild card. I mean, the European ensemble is suggesting, or the weeklies are suggesting at least early February will still be leaning colder than average. So we'll see. Don't worry about February yet. We have enough to deal with here in the month of January. Even that is going to be difficult, but that a little less difficult, I think, this year than most years. Okay, I really do think we're going to have snow lovers are going to have their chances this month, and I'd be surprised if it didn't. That's basically what I'll tell you. Okay, so the transient milder pattern late month into early January with the EPO returning this week. We're going to have the milder pattern generally between the 29th and around the 2nd or 3rd of January, and then we are sustainable colder temperatures relative to average in January. As for the month as a whole, will be slightly below average, and we're going to maintain the snowfall projections at above average, where we have now. It's actually slightly above average, but above average nevertheless. And I do think we can achieve that here in the month of January. Snowfall is limited to minor events and favor the interior locations for the rest of December. If that's going to happen, it's going to be with probably just one system. That's going to be that little clipper that I talked about coming in late Monday night, early Tuesday morning of this week. And it might give you like a coating to an inch or something. But, I mean, other than that, I don't see a pattern that's going to be conducive for snowfall going forward for the remainder of December. Probably going to have to wait until, like I said, the second week of January, it looks like, for those events to take place. So that's going to be it for this edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, December 22nd. I will see you again next week. I'll actually have it on Sunday next week. But I have the Eagles game today, so hopefully we wrap up the division and lock up at least the number 2 seed in the playoffs. That'll be nice to see in person. But I will see you again next week, next Sunday, which will be December 20. What is next Sunday? Today's the 29th. I'm trying to think of the days. So December 29th, I will see you again for the next Weather Weeklies video. Take care.